So our next speaker is Mr. David Brennan, IATA's Assistant Director, Cargo Safety and Standards. So Dave is going to walk us through some of the specific actions that are being taken in the area of safety, of special cargo, and more, in fact. So Dave, over to you.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. So we're going to start with safety. Safety remains the highest priority for aviation. And despite the crisis that we're in, we cannot lose sight that safety is critical. So one of the key planks to supporting safety is training. And of course, looking at dangerous goods training, there are problems, people being able to access training schools, classes being available because of the lockdown that's in place in many countries in the world. And so what we've seen is that many countries have issued exemptions. The civil aviation authorities have recognised the problem and have risen to that. They've issued extensions to the validity for dangerous goods training, which allows freight forwarders, shippers, ground handling agents and airlines to continue to work, continue to move dangerous goods and continue to do it safely. We should recognise that people still need to keep their eye on the ball, and even though you can't do recurrent training, or at least not in a classroom, there are some people that have stepped up, and IATA and many of the training schools are doing just this, is to deliver this training digitally. But if that's not available, then companies should look at how they can ensure that their staff are still keeping up with what they need to do. We're also seeing some issues where, unfortunately, unscrupulous people are rushing to try and make money out of this whole problem. And we've seen some increases in undeclared dangerous goods, in people offering what purports to be alcohol-based hand sanitizer, not in accordance with the regulations. And here it's important to recognise that we have reporting for a reason. It tells us what's going on and it gives us an idea of the health of the system. And again, we need to make sure that our incident reporting and investigation processes are kept going so that we can address these issues. There's also a lot of focus on cost, and obviously airlines and everybody else that are not generating the amount of money they're used to are looking at how they reduce costs. And there can be sometimes pressure to cut corners, to see if you can save money that way, and we need to be very careful. The industry has very good standard operating procedures, work instructions, and they're there for a reason. They allow us to operate safely. And so we need to be careful not to cut corners. It may look as if we're going to save money, but if there's incidents or worse, accidents, then we're going to be in much more trouble. And that moves me into non-normal operations. As Glenn mentioned, we are now looking at airlines putting their passenger aircraft back into service for the carriage of cargo. But before we do this, this is a non-normal operation. This is all very different. People are not used to doing this. And so before you get into it, you must do a very robust safety risk assessment. And this needs to involve everybody within the organisation that has a part to play. So for an airline, it'll be safety, flight operations, cabin operations, engineering, ground operations, and of course cargo. So if you move to the next slide. So what we're seeing, of course, is, and you can see it on the screen there, instead of we've got passengers sitting in the cabin, we're now going to have boxes in the cabin. This needs to be done under a very controlled way to ensure that what we put in the cabin is safe, that it's properly restrained, that it's within the weight and balance limits of the aeroplane, and we've got good protection such that if there is a fire, and we don't want that to happen, but should it happen, then we have people in the cabin who can respond. And so we've got guidance that's been developed to identify the processes around loading cargo in the overhead bins, coat cupboards and under the seats. And that can be done fairly easily. On the seats and in the cabin with seats removed, requires much more work. It requires engagement with the Civil Aviation Authority, and this is where the Airline Engineering Division will come in, because this must be controlled in a way that can be managed and managed safely. And the other area the airlines are looking at is if these aircraft are not carrying any passengers, then there is the opportunity to carry cargo aircraft only dangerous goods in the cargo compartment, subject to the airline having an approval from their Civil Aviation Authority to carry dangerous goods, and that this approval doesn't limit what they are able to carry. Next slide, please. And if we look at how air cargo and aviation is responding to the coronavirus pandemic, the first response was, in fact, the need to move specimens. This is the need for health professionals to get specimens for analysis so people can do diagnosis and then start treating the people who are ill. And air transport is key to getting these specimens from the outbreak site to a laboratory for analysis and evaluation. And here we worked with the World Health Organization, the WHO, to look back and see what is the appropriate classification for these specimens. And based on previous outbreaks, SARS, MERS, swine flu, it was determined that Category B infectious substance UN3373 is the appropriate classification. It manages the risk for transport, but allows these specimens to move very, very quickly, which is what's needed for the health system to address the outbreaks. Since then, we've moved into a different phase. Yes, there's still outbreaks emerging, and so they still need to move specimens around. But we now have government agencies, pharmaceutical companies, research laboratories looking at how they can develop vaccines or treatment for coronavirus, for the COVID-19. And here they're looking at moving cultures. And this is where the pathogen has been concentrated in a form that increases its likely to infect people should they become in touch with it. And so once again, talking with WHO, it's been determined that the appropriate classification for cultures is infectious substance affecting human, which is UN 2814. Now this, of course, is fully regulated, so requires a shipper's declaration for dangerous goods, acceptance check, the use of UN specification packagings, and this is because we're in a higher risk state and we need these additional requirements to ensure that once again we have a safe transport system. We don't want to put the people in transport at risk in moving these, and so we move up to Category A, which allows them once again to move very, very safely. Unfortunately, we've also seen that there's been a significant number of fatalities arising from COVID-19, and some of these people have died not at home, and their next of kin are looking to get the remains repatriated for burial. And once again, we've been working with the WHO, also the US Centers for Disease Control and ICAO to identify what are the appropriate steps that need to be put in place so that air transport can be used to safely move human remains to the next of kin for burial. And we've developed guidance that has been published on our website, and this, along with other guidance material for the specimens, for carriage of cargo in the passenger aircraft, in the cabin, is all available on the IATA website at iata.org/cargo. You'll find a lot of information there, and I know Brendan will talk more to that in a minute. And with that, I will say thank you very much and hand back to Brendan.
Thank you very much, Dave, for all of that really useful information.